So Chapter 3 of Episode 2 of Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, the first soldier, has officially released, and it is titled The Arduous Path to the Blade, and it follows Sephiroth's journey to obtain the legendary blade Masamune, and it is a doozy. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and we're going to break down this chapter in today's video. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here, you can subscribe if you'd like to help out the channel. So once again, thank you to Foz for playing through this chapter and making it available for all of us on YouTube. Once again, I'll leave a link in the description down below so you guys can check out the full upload in 4K, especially since this chapter in particular has some really good, eerie, atmospheric music. It is definitely worth the listen, and I'm kind of hoping they release a soundtrack later on down the line of all of the music from the first soldier, because there's some really good stuff here. And if you guys would like to get up to speed for Chapter 3, I'll leave a link in the description down below of my recaps of Chapters 1 and 2, so that way you guys know what's going on. So we continue with our group of Sephiroth, Angeal, Alyssa, and Bachman, and they are outside of this really eerie temple somewhere in the lands of Wutai, and they've been led to this temple via this energy feeling that Sephiroth is getting. He is drawn to the sword Masamune. And he keeps telling the party this sword is meant for me, but it's weird because he's never seen it before, he's never wielded it, and he's just been acting really strange. But despite all of that, the group heads inside anyway. Now as they roam this temple, this purple energy continues to follow the group. Bachman, who is the PR camera guy, then proceeds to explain what the temple is, saying it's the Carven Temple of Hodono. He says other temples like it do exist, but within this specific temple, there are 5 statues within it that continue to watch over the land. However, this is weird because Bachman has never been here before, and he questions, how did I even know any of this stuff? Alyssa, who has been acting super sus this entire journey, and also happens to look a lot like Lucrezia/Genova, says that it looks like the temple has taken a liking to him, which is kind of eerie. In this moment, the group is attacked, and after beating the monsters, they learn that there are still a lot of dangerous entities within this temple, and because they've been sealed away for a long time, they've gotten more dangerous. However, that is not going to stop Sephiroth because, again, he is dead set on getting his hands on this sword. Now, as the group continues on, they come across a massive monument that has ancient text on it. However, nobody can read it. But then again, those purple energy orbs show up and show illusions to the group. The illusion contains the people that used to live on that land as they were escaping the massive fire that once engulfed it, which we learned in previous chapters that there was these massive powerful beasts that were roaming the land, and Dechao and his warriors would have to use really powerful and devastating magic to get rid of them. This would then cause the land to burn, and the people would try and find new places to live. And just as they're about to get seemingly some important information from this illusion, the illusion disappears. Now in this moment, Bachman looks at the text on the monument and begins reading the names Dechao, Mulhan, Baltai, Gakuren, and Lido. And I'm pretty sure as I just read those names out aloud, my furniture is now floating. Now those names belong to the 5 swords of Igara, who were the warriors who defeated the monsters but also set ablaze to the land. The group is shocked that Bachman could read this text, and he tells them he is too, but he could hear a voice in his head telling him what to say. This seems like a bad omen, but according to Alyssa, it's not. It's good. That means that Bachman has the land's favor, and as long as they're with him, they should be safe. However, Angeal is in complete disbelief, and he is seemingly the only one who is acting normal on this journey, while everyone else seems to be entranced by the land. However, for Sephiroth, he's like, look man, if Bachman in this weird land can help me get this sword, I don't care. I won't complain. So they move on. As they proceed further, they come across a giant wall that has a lot of damage done to it, and Angeal questions, was this the doing of Masamune? Sephiroth then says there's only one blade that could do that. Now as he says this, another illusion appears, and it is the blacksmith Masamune, who we've been seeing in the previous chapters, the man who created the sword Masamune and also wields its power. We see him actually crafting the blade. and he's clearly obsessed with the blade. Now again, just as a recap, the thing we learned about Masamune the blade is that as it was crafted, it essentially drove everyone crazy. Everyone wanted to get their hands on this sword, to the point where Masamune was literally killing people in their sleep in the village to protect him and the sword and to prevent anyone from getting their hands on it. That's how bad things got. Alyssa remarks that in that illusion, Masamune looked like he was straight up possessed. Angeal also questions that now that sword seems to be targeting Sephiroth. However, Sephiroth is a little bit cocky right now, and he questions, well, if the sword is capable of deceiving people, I should be fine because I know of the sword's abilities and what it can do to people, which Masamune didn't know when he crafted it. And just to clear up some confusion, Masamune is the name of the blacksmith who created the sword, Masamune, so the names are kind of interchangeable to represent the blacksmith as well as the weapon. Of course, Angeal, being the voice of reason, continues to warn Sephiroth, telling him, look, it looks like this temple is trying to play tricks on us. We really gotta be careful. Now, as they proceed further, they come across a gigantic room that contains those 5 statues of the 5 warriors. Now, these 5 statues also contain the spirits of the beasts that were defeated and sealed away. And this is where we learn more about the 5 warriors themselves, starting off first with Wutai. He was a bit of a heavy drinker, but he was an incredibly skilled warrior who Dechao would eventually recruit. He was essentially the group's shield, the big tank guy who would protect the party. However, he would die at the age of 34. In this moment, the group is attacked, they fight off the beasts, and Bachman says if they can destroy all 5 of these entities, they'll gain access to the room that holds Masamune. So right away, Sephiroth's like, all right, let's get this done. Let's go get my sword. But again, Angeal keeps remarking something is off about this temple. What is wrong with you guys? Do you not feel that something here is off? And he's questioning the guys like, are you guys going crazy? Like, what the heck is going on? Bachman and Alyssa both remark that, yeah, they feel like something is weird, but it's not a bad feeling. And they urge Angeal to let that feeling in, which is super unsettling. The next statue we come across is of Mulhan, who was the youngest of the warriors and the only woman in the group. She was the most agile of the group, and because of that, she was able to relay orders during battles. She, however, died at the age of 17. Next is Gakuren, who is the oldest of the group and the group spellcaster. He would take materia, put it in his mouth, which has got to be weird, and use that magic to perform what they describe as being terrible wonders. He was also the one that cast the spell that not only defeated the beasts, but unfortunately engulfed the land in flames, destroying it. He died at the age of 62 and unfortunately was not aware of how devastating the spell he cast would be. Up next is Lido, who happens to be a master swordsman and the nephew of Dechao. He was so skilled that he could single-handedly keep any monster at bay, and even as the monsters were engulfed in flames, he never let up his attacks. He was described in his final moments of being fire incarnate with his entire armor set engulfed in fire. He died at the age of 25. Last is, of course, the man himself, Dechao, the founder of Wutai and the man who put the 5 warriors together. He would be the only survivor of the flame. He would also be one of the people responsible for founding Wutai. And although his demeanor was rough, he was loved and respected by the people in his land. He was covered in scars and would live to be 100 years old. Now, as they approach the Dechao statue, again, Angeal is like, look guys, we need to take a step back and clear our heads because we're headed for some danger. And Angeal, again, seems to be the only one who's not entranced by this temple. And he knows that something is not right with the rest of the group. However, the group wants to continue the mission, and Sephiroth says, look, Angeal, if you're too scared, you can leave, but I'm gonna get that blade. So again, Sephiroth is being very stubborn here. He even says to Angeal, that blade is mine. Again, he is obsessed with this Masamune. It is calling out to him. He's never wielded this thing before, but he feels connected to it. Now, it's in this moment that we flash back to the mission briefing for Angeal before this specific mission, and Angeal is the only one there getting the briefing. Sephiroth is not there, and when Angeal asks why he's not there, they say, well, he's Sephiroth, he can kind of do what he wants. But you can trust him because no matter how dangerous a mission is, he will always get the job done, and Angeal thinks to himself, wow, he seems like a really good partner to have then. However, it cuts back to current day, and as Angeal is thinking about that mission briefing, he says to himself, I'm starting to question if I was wrong. Now it's here they defeat the final beast of the Dachau statue and their path is now clear, but again, Angeal warns the group, it's going to get really, really dangerous ahead. And he begins to question the entire journey and everyone's behavior because something is clearly very wrong here. However, Alyssa, who again is really weird, has been seemingly encouraging the weird behavior of Sephiroth, tries to turn the tables on Angeal and says, the only person acting weird here is you. And it seems pretty clear that the village is trying to help us. Sephiroth then chimes in and gets really pissed off and he warns Angeal, don't get in my way. Angeal, however, does not take Sephiroth's warning lightly and punches Sephiroth in the jaw, knocking him down. However, Sephiroth gets right back up, says that that sword was made for him, he is the rightful owner and nothing will get in his way. He then punches Angeal back, knocking him out. He feels that what he is feeling right now, those impulses, are not weird, there's nothing wrong with it, and they then proceed to the chamber holding Masamune as Angeal is laid out. As they enter the chamber, we then cut back to Angeal, who is being surrounded by that purple energy, which then cuts to a dream that Angeal now has. And we've seen the characters of Angeal and Sephiroth have these dreams that have this purple-pink border around them. Seemingly they are being influenced by whatever these spirits are. And in this dream, Angeal has taken his parents on a vacation, but as he is communicating with them, the words no keep flashing up on the screen as if something clearly is not right here. And during this entire dream, it really feels like Angeal's parents are guilt tripping him about the Buster Sword. It's like, we paid a lot of money, you're not even using this, you must not even like this, so here's a new sword, which makes Angeal feel terrible because he knows how expensive it is to have these swords made. However, Angeal starts to break through whatever this dream is and he realizes this never happened because at this point in time, his father was already dead and he was responsible for it, or at least he feels he was responsible for his father's death. Angeal breaks free of that dream and is then transported to a purple void where his mother shows up and continues to guilt trip him. However, Angeal is too smart and he realizes his mom would never speak to him this way and calls out whatever entity has taken the shape of his mother. He defeats this entity and remembers the words of his mother, his true mother, and all of the lessons that he learned from her about being true to your own sense of judgment and to not let your surroundings dictate your actions. Now, Angeal realizes that people important to him have shown up in these dreams to try and manipulate him. So then he questions who is showing up to Sephiroth that's making him act this way. And from what we've seen so far, it seems to be an illusion of Genova / Lucrezia, who again, at this point, Sephiroth sees Lucrezia, but Hojo has told him her name is Genova, that is your mom. So crazy manipulation is happening here, not just from people like Hojo, but whatever these purple spirits actually are. We cut back to the chamber and Sephiroth is acting all weird, man. He's like, there's the Masamune, I need to get it, but everything starts to get really hazy. He falls to his knees and we then get a flashback of Sephiroth with Glenn, Matt, and Lucia as they return to the Shinra Tower after their mission in Rador. Sephiroth is told that the president wants to see him because he's gonna get a special commendation for the mission in the form of a promotion. However, Glenn, Matt, and Lucia, their status is currently in question. Sephiroth vouches for them saying, look, things could have been way worse if they weren't there and they should be rewarded too. Because again, even though Sephiroth and Glenn and Matt and Lucia had a bit of a weird falling out, he got really close to them on that mission and he deemed them friends. So he still cares about them and he's vouching for them even right now when the relationship is kind of fractured. Glenn tries to reassure him and says, look man, go get your commendation, we'll celebrate with you afterwards. Now it cuts to them celebrating and Matt tells him, look, now that you've got a promotion, you're going to have a lot more responsibilities. You're going to be picking your teams, picking your missions. And speaking of that, what do you think of this place? And he shows him a photo of an area that looks a lot like Wutai, a very beautiful land. However, we never learn the name of this location because Glenn, Matt, and Lucia are pulled away by Shinra soldiers saying they are going to be facing judgment by a tribunal. And that's because things did not go well on Rador. The island completely sunk, so they're going to be punished for their actions. And Sephiroth is like, look, I was part of that too. I should be punished as well. However, the Shinra soldiers claim that there was a witness that claims that Sephiroth was innocent. Sephiroth knows that's a lie and tries to tell them, but unfortunately, it doesn't work. Glenn, Matt, and Lucia then reassure Sephiroth, look, we'll be back. Don't worry about it. And Glenn then tells Sephiroth, could you also look after the dog, Rifu, who they rescued from Rador? Now, as that flashback ends, we return to Sephiroth and the group. Angeal has also caught up, and they see this statue of Masamune holding the sword. Masamune, Alyssa, again, being a bit sus, encourages Sephiroth to go take the sword. As Sephiroth approaches Masamune and reaches for the sword, those purple energy orbs show up reanimating Masamune's body. And he tells Sephiroth, I'll be the judge of whether you are truly worthy of this blade. Sephiroth beats Masamune in battle and he's impressed. Masamune's like, okay, like you've got some skills, man. I deem you worthy. However, it's in question if the spirits will deem you worthy. And it turns out those spirits are the ones who commanded Masamune to craft the blade in the first place. As Sephiroth goes to reach for the sword, Masamune returns back to statue form and the sword itself disappears. And it's looking like the spirits aren't quite ready to deem Sephiroth worthy of wielding this blade. In this moment, Sephiroth gets incredibly angry. However, Alyssa has to remind him, look, control your temper because it's pretty clear that these spirits are trying to test you. And it's looking like more trials will await Sephiroth. This is not going to be an easy task of just grabbing this blade. He's going to be going through a lot more. Now, in this moment, a voice calls out to Sephiroth and begins to speak to him. The voice apologizes to him for kicking his locket into the live stream and for hitting him and knocking him down. Now, if we flash back to the previous chapters, we know that Glenn and Sephiroth got into a bit of a scuffle. Glenn kicked the locket, which had the picture of Jenova/Lucrezia in it, into the live stream, and he knocked Sephiroth down because in that moment, Sephiroth took the life of a Radorian kid, although there's a lot of miscommunication there because Glenn, Matt, and Lucia see Sephiroth kill the young boy, but the young boy was having a conversation with Sephiroth, and Sephiroth was trying his best to save the kid. But the young boy, he just wanted to be with his family, and he asks Sephiroth, please just end my existence. So Sephiroth abides and takes his life. But it's not in cold blood, it's done in an act of mercy, and Sephiroth feels terrible about it because, again, Sephiroth wants to be a hero that helps people, and in that instance, he unfortunately couldn't save the young boy. Now, as this voice is speaking, Sephiroth is super confused because he is certain that voice belongs to Glenn. But what is Glenn doing in this location? We don't see him, we just hear his voice echoing through the halls, or at least the characters do. The journey is clearly taking its toll on Sephiroth, so the group decides, look, we should take a break, regroup ourselves, and then move forward. Now here, Bachman does what he's been doing in the previous chapters, and he's recounting his journey, specifically focusing on Sephiroth, because his job here is not only to create a PR video to show how good the soldiers are and how specifically good Sephiroth is, but he seems to be given the task of really analyzing Sephiroth, his strengths, his weaknesses, how he gets along with Angeal. He's really documenting everything about him, and he starts to question, can Sephiroth move forward on this journey, and will these cruel trials that he's going to go through, will those mold him even further? Now, to end the chapter, much like previous chapters, we get more dream sequences for Sephiroth and Angeal, but we start with Sephiroth, and he's in the Shinra Tower fighting Hojo's experiments. So Hojo is putting him through this arduous trial of defeating all of these weird creatures that he's created, but in that scenario, Jenova, air quotes, Jenova, / Lucrezia shows up and urges Hojo to stop the trial. She does not want Sephiroth to get hurt, so she grabs Sephiroth and they leave. We then have a conversation between Sephiroth and Jenova where she tells him that she's worried about his safety and reassures him that he is truly special. He's an important person with the ability to save and defend the weak. And for her, she feels like it's her duty to protect him. But then she tells him, sleep. Don't worry about waking up. And here we really see how much love Sephiroth really has for his mother, and he says the quote, even if the world crumbled to dust, I will be there to protect you. So Sephiroth's got some mama issues that are clearly being preyed upon. After this, we cut to Angeal's dream, and his dream is much more somber. He's at the funeral of his father. And now with his father being gone, he feels it's his duty to keep his mom safe. However, his mom turns to him and says, "You've got a lot of nerve being here." Angeal, clearly confused, his mom blames Angeal for killing his father. He went into debt for creating the Buster Sword, and she continues to just lay on the guilt trip super thick. Which Angeal starts to question, like, I would just wanted to help them. Like, ever since I was younger, my goal was to join Soldier and be able to take care of my family so they never had to work ever again and that they would be safe. But then he starts to question, like, did I join to actually help people, or did I join just to get praise? He refers to himself as being selfish and just a disgrace, and that maybe he should just disappear. His mom then says to him, "Don't add any more weight to your sins, just rest forever." However, because Angeal's will is incredibly strong and he's been through this before, he manages to wake himself up from the dream. And he says, "Oh, I almost fell for their tricks again." And in this moment, Angeal kind of feels a bit lost because he's been trying to warn the team, like, hey, we gotta stop. Something's not right here, but they're not listening to him. They would much rather give into that feeling and feel comforted by whatever words they're hearing. However, Angeal, with that will being strong, he says he's not going to yield. So what's really interesting about Angeal in this chapter is every single time he breaks free of one of those dreams, he's using the Buster Sword to do so, which is a really big deal because Angeal very rarely ever uses that weapon for anything unless it's like a break glass in case of emergency type of scenario. He really treasures that Buster Sword because it's a gift from his parents, specifically from his dad who is no longer alive. So for him to instinctively grab the Buster Sword to break free is really interesting, and at the very end of that final dream, he looks at the sword and even questions like, was it you? I.e., was it the sword protecting him? Maybe the spirit of his father is hanging around, kind of ensuring that he's not corrupted by whatever weird entity is on this island that seems to be corrupting the other party members. So it kind of makes me wonder if the Buster Sword might come into play again further on in this story. Maybe as Sephiroth gets a little unhinged or he actually obtains the Masamune, maybe that Buster Sword and Angeal might be key to kind of centering Sephiroth and helping him maybe break free of whatever weird obsession he's got for this sword. Which brings us to the end of the chapter. Now this is really interesting because clearly the land that they're on, which is a section of Wutai, these energies, these spirits are clearly manipulating Sephiroth and Angeal in different ways. They're clearly trying to build up Sephiroth, build his confidence up. Alyssa in particular, being, a questionable figure, is really trying to let Sephiroth know that blade is meant for you. Don't listen to Angeal. You're strong, you're a hero, you're incredible, that blade was meant for you. And when Sephiroth has those dreams, it's the dreams of his loving mother trying to reassure him that he is special and that he's meant to protect people. But you look at Angeal's dreams and they're the exact opposite. These spirits are trying to manipulate Angeal into a guilt trip, to feel bad, to question his confidence, his honor, his purpose in life. So it's almost like these spirits acknowledge that Angeal is going to be an important figure in Sephiroth's life, and they're doing whatever they can to try and fracture what future relationship might be there. And it's working so far. Again, Sephiroth is very closed off, doesn't want to work with Angeal, doesn't want to share information. He just wants to go in, get a mission done, and in this case, get Masamune and let nothing get in his way. So I'm very curious to see what exactly these spirits are. We do know that some of them are the people that resided there in the land, but with the color of the spirits being kind of purpley pink and that being such a color that is associated with Jenova, I can't help but wonder if somehow Jenova has manipulated the land and is now trying to communicate through these spirits and these dreams to reach Sephiroth. But overall, I actually really enjoy this chapter. It's not as eventful story-wise with Sephiroth and Angeal as the previous chapters were, but we do get a lot of lay of the land in terms of Wutai, Dachau, the warriors that fought off the beasts, as well as that peek into the psyche of people like Sephiroth and Angeal. So clearly more trials will await Sephiroth before he can get his hands on Masamune. And it is important to remember, the character of Alyssa says in the opening trailer for this season that once Sephiroth gets his hands on Masamune, it will change the world. So clearly there's some big implications going on there. But I think once Sephiroth actually does get Masamune, that's going to be the start of his war hero arc, where he becomes the big war hero Sephiroth and goes on this quest of wanting to protect people and be their defender, and will eventually hopefully learn to trust Angeal, which we know, later down the line, he and Angeal do become good friends. And that is it for Chapter 3. Now, I don't know when Chapter 4 is going to release. The way they used to release these chapters, it seemed like every other month they would have a new installment of the first soldier. However, this episode came a little bit later than I was expecting. I thought maybe it would drop in February, but here we are in April, getting the new chapter, so who knows when the next one will appear, but when it does, we'll check it out and recap it here on the channel. With that being said, I am Curious Corduroy. That is the video. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on what we covered in Chapter 3 of The First Soldier. What are your thoughts on Sephiroth's obsession with Masamune? And what did you guys think of the backstory of the 5 warriors? I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.